20.
Okay.
20 seconds, guys. 20
All right,
seconds.
ready to solve, ready to open mic and cue talent, ready to fade
Have a
some
great
music,
show.
guys. Let's do it. Let's do
15.
it. Let's do it, baby. Playoff hockey, guys. It's time
We're
for the
live in
music show.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Take it away.
Driving forward, he slips through. Touchdown, Sacred Heart.
A shot by Kearns and a score.
Kicking out to McGee for three. It's good. 71-44, Sacred Heart with the lead. It is our final broadcast of the year and the final broadcast for an outstanding crew. We are so lucky, Joe, and I've been here 16 years. It's never.
You don't get into sports on accident. Like, you get into sports because you like sports. You want to be around sports. From the outside, and I feel this even with my own family sometimes, like, they don't fully understand what I do. Like, sometimes my dad thinks it's all just fun and games, like, which it is, because that's the part he sees. He comes to games and sees us having a blast and putting on an event, and that's a lot of fun. I don't think people see probably the work that goes into things 2, 3, 4 days ahead of time. They don't see everybody in our office grinding it out all week and then also working 12 hours on Saturday. I think that's probably the challenging part that most people don't see and most people don't understand, and that's okay. Like, if we didn't like it, we wouldn't be here anyway.
Yeah, I think people don't necessarily always realize how much effort goes into putting on a show, especially at a place like Martiri Family Arena, where there's so many different capabilities and so many things that kind of need to be thought of. You know, it's long hours, but it's really rewarding in the end. So, and it's a lot of fun, you know, like, there are definitely hard days and things that don't go as planned, but at the end of the day, like, it is a fun job, even if it can be difficult.
First of all, it depends on the sport, right? Different sports have very different needs. We're in the hockey arena, so like an average hockey week probably starts on Monday. I start scheduling out our student workers usually Monday for the whole week.
So I write the scripts for all of our fully marketed sports, which is football, men's and women's hockey, and men's and women's basketball. So kind of depending on the week that we have, whether there's basketball games during the week and hockey during the weekend, kind of determines when the preparation starts. Getting that done as quickly as possible is best because people have different videos that they want to run. So just making sure that all of the bare bones is complete so that we can add those things in later and kind of move things around.
A typical day in October when I had all 4 of my sports in season, a lot of it was prep for certain sports. Different days were different sports. So Monday would be getting files, send it to the opposing SIDs, our word roster, all of our files that they need to have.
Average day definitely depends on what day of the week we're at. I think if you look at Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, you're very much secretary kind of vibes. It's very much just desk work, emails.
Work on social media stuff to put out during the week. A lot of graphics and stuff would go out on Mondays just to preview the week's matchup.
For me, on the communication side, it's a lot of social media buildup. We're trying to push people to our games. We're trying to get the word out. We're trying to publicize our games before they happen.
Tuesday was notes, getting all those notes packets done, which takes a lot longer than expected, especially at the beginning of the season. But mainly it's a lot of just getting things ready for game days, getting the nuance and minute stuff done first, and then kind of preparing for the game so I'm not scrambling day of.
We're also building out preview content. So game notes for a hockey game are gonna run on Wednesday before a weekend series. And it's pretty similar for most of our sports. You get the cadence of you're using social media early in the week to tell people when the events are. You're using it and our website later in the week to tell them why they should care. Why do you want to go to this game? Why should you pay attention to our team that's playing?
For hockey, it's a little bit more intensive just because there's capabilities of the facility. So having that done at the start of the week, if we have weekend games, is probably the best. There are different sponsorship elements that also kind of get thrown in at the last minute sometimes. Different activations and how people want to kind of do things.
When it comes towards Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, you get into that game day kind of mode where you're kind of here depending on the event, whether it's basketball, hockey, volleyball, you're here at a certain time, and then you, dependent on if you have 2 games that day, 1 game, you have work from like 8 in the morning to 11 o'clock at night.
Personally, I try to have as much done before game day as I can. So game day is kind of just make sure everything works, make sure the stats computer works, make sure the printer works, get everything up and running as early as possible so that there's enough time to troubleshoot if we need to.
And that's kind of the beauty of it, that nothing ever really is the same. A lot of it is just on the go and you're just kind of winging it a little bit and see what problems arise during that time. But definitely no day is the same.
So it's kind of different for all the sports. For football, I was running music as well as running show. For me, running show means keeping everybody on pace with the script. The PA announcer, the video board person, music, as well as with hockey, the lights.
For soccer, I stat my own games, so a lot of the social media stuff is, there's only 2 graphics that go out during and after a game for soccer, which is the halftime graphic on both Instagram and Twitter, and the full-time graphic, which is the same thing.
I think if you go to basketballs, the hockeys and footballs, the broadcasts are a bit more intense and more, I guess, choreographed. You have elements that you want to get through, you want to have sideline talent, and you want to make sure that those games, especially some of those that are on like SNY and linear TV, that those are better than your usual streaming games. Whereas if you go to volleyball, it's more of a learning tool. So like a lot of those volleyballs, those smaller sports we use to kind of build up our students to get to those linear games and have that experience.
Make sure the stats program is linked to both the scoreboard and also our website so that people can watch the live stats, make sure the stream's working, make sure I have everything needed from a computer aspect. It's a lot of our social media platform for graphics that we use, making sure I have those ready for intermissions and everything. For games that maybe you're not there's lead sport contact, I've worked a few basketball games. I've been the mascot for 2 games.
So I call out what we're doing next. I'm making sure that the PA knows like, oh, we're doing the Kawama read now, and oh, it's time to do the Stevens Ford read. With hockey, I also control the volume in the arena, so making sure that once the puck drops, there's no longer any audio coming out of the board.
I try to expect which things are going to fail. For example, we had lacrosse yesterday and it rained. We had cables sitting out. Fully prepared that moment that those cables could completely just not work because of the rain. Even though they were bagged and they should withhold the weather, there's always a chance because of how old they are that they will not work. So in my mind, fully prepared 2 hours prior to rerun all those cables that we needed. Did anyone else know that? No, because there's no need to worry anyone else if that's not going to happen.
I think from where we're at, we can kind of take the temperature of the audience, just, you know, with the puck shuffle, if people are calling out different numbers, you can tell that that's something that really kept them in. Whereas if you run something else that maybe there's not as much crowd response, you know that that's not necessarily working. A big part of that is also just kind of crowdsourcing from other schools and other different events. Like if you go to an NHL game, that audience is different than maybe a college audience would be. So seeing what keeps different audiences engaged is important, and then kind of testing it out with what you have, and also just taking the temperature with your own work studies and seeing, because they're in school here and they can kind of read the vibe maybe a little bit better than I can. So just kind of listening to what people are saying and really taking that into account when you're building out different scripts and things. And if you try new things and it doesn't work, like, that's okay. You just move on to the next thing. You can run it again, see if it works.
But I think just embracing the chaos, embracing that you're gonna have to move if things don't go as planned. And at the end of the day, it's just TV. Like our professor taught us when we were in grad school that you're not a brain surgeon. No one is going to get injured. Nothing terrible will happen.
Well, we have a lot of athletes, right? So like anything else, that varies from person to person. There are athletes who absolutely understand everything we do. We have athletes who work on our student staff. They definitely get it. And there's some who are just here to play sports, and that's fine too.
I definitely don't think they notice. It's a lot of people, especially when we get those students in like a sports broadcasting class, they're like, the game is literally at 7 p.m. Why are we here at X amount of time? Like I know when I started working football and game was at noon, I would have to get there at 5 in the morning. And at first you're like, why do I have to be here at 5 in the morning? I'm like, I could be sleeping right now. And it's not until you start working, and then even though you're there so many hours prior, you still don't have enough time. There is no such thing as enough time. In basketball, we added the jib last year, and they really were like, there's this whole mechanical arm, or the band even noticed, and they're not athletes, but they still notice that there's a difference. So I think it's the more coverage they get, I think the more they're able to notice. And I think that there's parts of it being pros and cons. I mean, I feel like if they notice, they are able to think ahead of what they're gonna say. I think a lot of times, especially as a growing institution, they don't exactly know what to say, and they're not prepared to have a camera in their face, which is something that we're trying to improve on as we transition to the MAC. Whereas that they need this media training now as like a mid-major school, and they'll start to notice more in the next like few months that like they need to know what to say and know how to talk about themselves in the program.
So I think some athletes notice it, some don't, and either is fine.
McNeil in on alone. A chance to win it for Sacred Heart. She shoots. Scores!
My parents especially, because being so far away from here, like they come once a month or twice a month, so they can't really come to games very often. So I know they watch the live stream, my grandparents watch it, and it's just way better quality than what it was. I remember having people in Shelton like stand up holding the camera like this and like follow the play, and like our parents would have to text people about being no sound, there's no like very bad video, it's like really delayed. And so now my parents can watch actual hockey and like actually see what's going on. So they're really grateful for that and really glad they can actually watch.
I also think like the play-by-play, especially on the live stream, like older grandparents and like aunts and uncles that watch, like that's a big difference from Shelton as well. Like it wasn't as
and the graphics,
good as it is. Everything, yeah.
The graphics came up and like all that new stuff.
Replays and everything, yeah.
And it's a great way to make connections with people that normally a lot of people won't be able to, and you also get to see things that a lot of people don't get to see. It's a lot about making sure that the athletes get what they need and, you know, developing that relationship with them as best as possible, and making sure that at the end of the day you're working for them. It's still a job, but it's fun, especially with you're working for the athletes and they also help you out.